So, you want to build a spreadsheet, maybe something cool like this, where you can kind of break down the data in detail, see some charts, some graphs. Maybe you want something even more visual, like this, where you can really control the look and feel of what you're being shown and be able to put the data together in a way that suits you or your team. Well, in a previous video, I shared the number one tip for starting a new spreadsheet. If you didn't catch that, I'm linking it in here so you can go back and check that out if you'd like to. But essentially, the key that I recommend is starting off right by creating a data source sheet within your spreadsheet. Instead of starting with what you want it to look like or what the end result will be, or just slapping it all in there, start with a structure for your initial data. And so we're going to step through the process of doing that so you can see exactly what I'm talking about and how I would go about it in creating sheets like these. So for our example, what we'll do is take a look at my Twitch channel data. Maybe I want to take this information, which I do, which breaks down by week over week, different data that I choose to put up here. This is a little dashboard that Twitch actually has behind the scenes for me to be able to see my data. But if I want to create something that is within a spreadsheet that I have control over how it looks, how it compares numbers over what periods of time, it's going to be better for me to create my own spreadsheet. This can apply, this process that we're going to go through will apply to anything you do, whether it's your budget stuff, if you're pulling in credit card statements or client data or whatever, it doesn't matter. The process, the concept is exactly the same. So what we'll do is first thing we want to do is find a way to get our data. Now, hopefully you're not in a situation where you literally have to copy down number for number. We're in a day and age where that is not going to work well, and that everybody has kind of catered to being able to provide data to you in a way that you can drop it into a spreadsheet. So in this case, I've got this nice little export data down here at the bottom. And so when we click on that, we get this spreadsheet here that pops up that has all of my data from Twitch. And you're going to see there's quite a bit of it. And so one of the first questions you might have, and this is going to be key to what we're going to talk about in this session, is what do I use? What's good for me to pull out of here and what's not? And so I want to cover that kind of that process of determining, because this can kind of make or break your spreadsheet. And so we'll just dive straight in. We're going to create a brand new spreadsheet from scratch, and I'm going to show you how I walk through this, and then you can apply this to whatever project you're starting. And I hope you find it helpful. If you enjoy this, again, I got to use do the casual, usual plea for a like or what have you. And I'll be doing some follow-up videos to this to start diving into the later processes of building out a spreadsheet. This one is going to be focused on just getting your data in there. So if you want to go beyond that, throw a follow so that you'll be notified when I get these new ones posted. And I appreciate your patience. All right. So this is the Twitch stream data that I have downloaded and offers me a lot of different columns. Now, what I recommend you do is look over your data sheet. You want to keep as much of it as you possibly can. If you can just copy and paste the entire data structure into your brand new spreadsheet, that's the best way to go. But in a case like this, where there's a lot of data, we've got even columns that are off the screen here, it might start to be a lot to go over. Now, your computer system is going to be able to handle it, and it doesn't really matter how much you deal with. But there are limitations, as I mentioned in a previous video, where you are somewhat limited. You're going to have like 10 million cells of data as a total. high bound. And otherwise, then you're going to have to start creating. I think it may actually be 1 million. I get Google Sheets and Excel confused sometimes. They do have slightly different numbers. I cover the numbers exactly in a different video, so you can check that out. But the point here is getting back to focusing on our task at hand is that if you have a super, super large amount of data and most of it isn't necessary, you're going to end up just clogging up your spreadsheet by importing the whole thing. It's going to be faster, it's going to be easier, and it might be okay. It might be fine. But I'm going to show you how to kind of pick and choose. So, obviously, you're going to want to pick anything that's important to you and critical to you. But there's two big things that I recommend to look for when you're going over this data and just deciding what are you going to put in and what are you not. And that is any kind of column that has data where everything in the column is the same, where you're getting the exact same result in every single column. An example of that might be, let's say you've downloaded your bank, your credit card statement that you're going to go over, and there is a column for account, and you only have one account. Well, that's going to be the exact same piece of data in that entire column. You have no need for that. That's redundant information. If there is no difference between what is stored in that column, then there's no point in having the column. Now here we've got a few columns that have the same number throughout the entire thing, such as this one that says hosts and raid viewers. Well, nope. See, if we scroll down, we do actually have some numbers in there. Great, so we definitely need that. But we might find some columns here at the end or what have you where it's all zeros all the way down. So what you have to ask yourself is, are these going to be zeros all the time, or is this something I'm going to care about in the future? And so I want to import the zeros. I want that part of my data because this might change in the future. So you have to look at what that piece of data is and make that decision yourself. Now, here's what I recommend. If you're going to remove a column, let's say we decide, you know what, these columns right here with these zeros are not anything I'm ever going to keep track of. Just simply delete it from this sheet. You can always re-export it if you make a mistake or do something wrong, but just delete these sheets or these columns and make a note that these are the columns that you're taking out. For example, at the end, you're going to delete all these that say multi at the beginning. And I'm not saying that you want to do this. I'm just using an example. So you decide these are the ones you want to. So you could say last three columns in the sheet. You could say the ones that are multi, whatever it is. But you want to make it a little note for yourself of which columns you're going to remove. Because when you import this in the future, let's say I go and pull the next month's data, I'm going to grab this exact same format sheet, and the one that I create, we want to match them one for one. So we're going to want to delete the same columns next month as I'm deleting now. Okay, so if we just delete these straight from the worksheet, then now we don't have that data. All right, hopefully that makes sense for that part of it. Now, the other thing you want to look for, just like it doesn't make sense to keep columns where it's the same value in every single row, you also don't want columns where it's a unique value in every single row, unless it is a very specific thing that you need for your breakdown. So if, for example, there is one row for every date, as is the case here, each row is a specific date, and so every single row is a unique value, but the date is very important to us, so we do want to leave that. But a good example of this might be, again, let's just use the example of, say, a credit card statement. And you decide to drop that credit card information into your spreadsheet, and you look at it, and there's a column for, I don't know, you know, like a routing number or something. Maybe that's not a great example because that could theoretically be duplicated in places. Um, but some piece of information, I wish I had a better one off the top of my head, that you just don't need. Sometimes it's some sort of unique identifying number. Now, if you want it as a reference, so let's say it's a transaction ID number, and you want that as a reference to be able to go back to your bank and say, oh, hey, I found this issue with this one, then you're going to want to keep it in. But for analyzing data, that column isn't going to help you a bit because every single number is completely unique. And so, unless you're using your database or your spreadsheet to look up transaction numbers, you're probably not going to need that. You're probably not going to want that. So, that would be another example of a column that you could delete and just remove because every single thing is completely unique. All right. So, those are the two things that you're primarily going to look for. You could also, this one's up to you. I prefer to keep zero data in, as we just talked about with the columns where you have a bunch of zeros. You want to look at it and see, am I going to need that? What I mean now about zero data is, let's say you're looking at dates, the rows that go down, and you see on this date, it's zeros all the way across here. Okay. Now, I could theoretically choose to delete this row because there's no data. It's zeros on everything. And so we could clean it up. There's actually a 34-cent value right there. So I wouldn't want to do that. And that's a risk you run if you just start deleting things. I think it's better to just keep it all in there unless, again, you have just a huge amount of data and you don't want those entries with zeros. Then you could go in and remove those manually if you would like. You could also create a formula that would identify which rows have zeros all the way across. We can maybe talk about that in a future video. If that's something you'd like to see, drop that in the comments. But I think for the most part, you're just going to want to leave all your rows in. The less you adjust this, the easier it's going to be, because we're going to jump into that right now. Let me show you what we're going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and reduce this on size, and we're going to start a brand new sheet. So I'm just going to go to a new workbook, and we're going to open this up. And this process would be exactly the same. I'm using Excel right now, but it's the exact same process, whether you're using Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, or probably even any other spreadsheet software. And so we're just going to create a brand new one, and we're going to start by the simplest thing you can do. Once you've decided which columns of data you need using that process we talked about, copy this header column, or sorry, header row. Just copy this entire row as is and drop it in as your first row in your new spreadsheet. And that way your headings are exactly the same way, the same format, same text as they are in your raw data that you're getting from the original source. And that's going to make things really easy to line up, especially if, say, for example, we decided we wanted to delete this column right here in the middle. Okay, then every month we have to know we've got to delete this column before we paste our data into our new spreadsheet. And you might say, what do you mean paste it into the spreadsheet? Well, this is how we're going to get our data into our new setup and system. Again, I covered this a little bit in that last video, but all we're going to do in this case, we could have just, instead of copying the header, since it's our very first one, we could just copy the entire spreadsheet of whatever we have left. Once we've deleted what we know we don't need, we copy whatever is left and we drop it in. But I'm dropping in the header only just to show you for future months how you would do this. What you want to do is grab your data that is over to wherever it is you left off here. We're just going to highlight that first row, And then we can do a nice little control shift down and take us to the bottom of our data. And so everything is highlighted that is in this sheet with those same columns. Now, this sheet's got a very interesting dilemma here. We're going to have to clean our data because we've got a bunch of blank cells in here. And so that's something to really consider is probably Twitch decided to stop collecting data on this. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into why they stopped providing numbers for that, but that would be my guess. So do we want to even keep that in the sheet? This might be a great example of a reason why we would say, you know what, I'm going to get rid of these columns because they're no longer providing this data. So I'm just going to delete that. I would make note which columns I removed. I can come back up here and then let's just delete this and repaste. We'll grab everything. Okay, copy. And we'll come down into here and we'll paste this data. Okay, so we're using the exact same headers. Now you can change them if you want, but I recommend against it. The reason being, essentially what we want to do with this data sheet is we want it to just mirror as identically as possible, maybe even 100% the exact same data, the exact same sheet as what we're getting from the source. You want to change it as little as possible because you're going to create a whole separate sheet within your new worksheet to pull from that data and create your tables, your charts, your setup, or your dashboard look, whatever it is you're going for. All right. And so now that we've pasted this in, and now let's say it's the following month and we come in and we look at this, you'll see I've got all of these in here going down through when I made this video, which is today, Monday, July 14th. But let's say that I had pulled this at the end of June and now I pull this chart again. I could just go and grab where I left off, which would be July 1st. And I could grab this data here for July 1st to the end. And I can copy that. And then I can come down to the bottom of my page of where I left off. And again, we're assuming that this left off at June. And I can just paste these values right at the bottom of this. So next month or whenever I update this, it doesn't have to be a specific day. I can just see, okay, what's the date I left off? And let me paste everything from that one forward right down here so that we don't want to have duplicate lines like I did in this example. You just want to be able to continue pasting further and further down each month or however often you pull your data. And you don't have to create a separate sheet every time you grab a new one. You've already got your format, you've already got your structure, and you just copy and paste your data straight into the bottom of your newly created spreadsheet. That's how we're going to start off. Make sure we save this, of course. So we'll do a nice little save as and put that where we want to work on it next time so that we can actually start creating ways to grab from this data to view what we want to do and to work with. But I hope that helps somebody. I hope that makes sense. Again, kind of the why behind this is explained in that previous video that I mentioned. And in future videos, we'll definitely start diving into how to make this data work for us. Thanks for checking us out, and I hope to see you again.